Sweet, and we are live. All right. So, guys, thank you everyone for those who are jumping in and going to tune in, share, watch, enjoy this episode. Episode or whatever I like to call it. Today, I have the privilege of having JP Ah Chee on, and JP and I connected recently over social media, which is one of the brilliant things about social media in this day and age is that you can connect with incredible people all around the world or Australia. We had a mutual connection through, or hit it off instantly through that. We both have a passion for improving mental health through, physical exercise and stuff like that. And as we got speaking a bit more, I got to learn a lot more about JP's story. And, obviously hence why we're here. I got excited for him to share with you guys because I know that he will have a super powerful way to share his story about what he's experienced when he decided it was time to make a change and how he has transformed his life now. And he's still obviously challenged with mental health instances throughout life, as we all do, as life gets hectic. But he's come up with his own ways to create awareness around crushing that, and currently working in the health and fitness industry, potentially, hopefully, going into the corporate industry to make some waves there. And it really helped with the mental health sides of things. So, JP, legend. Did you want to sort of throw anything else in there that I may have missed out?
No, that's spot on. Thanks for that. That's a great introduction.
Awesome, man. Glad I could do it justice. But first of all, I guess to start off, and then we were just having a little bit of a background conversation, guys, about how to really ask this question. It's like, who is JP? And sort of what was the point that, you decided you needed to make a change? And I guess who you are can be so broad, but for the basis of this podcast or audio, it's really just who you are now and what you're doing or giving back into the community that's purpose driven as a personal trainer and a health professional. What does that look like for you on a daily basis? And then we'll keep going with that and we'll play around with it.
Awesome. Cool. So at the moment, I am working at F45, fantastic community and supportive environment. And the main reason I got into that was because I'm a strong believer in being comfortable with being uncomfortable. So being in front of a group of people I'm pretty sure a lot of people can be quite daunting and scary. So I just threw myself into it and was pleasantly surprised at the feedback and how supportive the guys actually were. So me now as a person, like I'm so much more outgoing and engaging and proactive. So with my PT background going into F45, it was a really good change of pace. And I got to really help a whole range of people that were almost like-minded in what they were wanting to achieve a lot quicker than, say, the standard one-on-one module that most of us trainers start off with. So it was so invigorating to be able to walk in every day, start the class, get involved, and just keeping the energy high and engaging with people. And it's the first time I've actually been in a job where I've actually made friends a lot faster. And with the whole social anxiety side of it, that's been a huge help. So that's who I am now.
Yeah. So that's a great oversight. And I loved what you said just before about getting comfortable at being uncomfortable. And
Yeah.
to put this into context, I guess, is for yourself, and you just sort of touched on it, then having the social anxiety and then all of a sudden you're coaching a class of, how many people do you coach in it? Is it 10 or is there a cap in F45?
Anywhere between sort of 25 to 30 plus.
Right. That's a lot of people to be in front of, especially with someone who, has been challenged with social anxiety. So I guess going back from that, and this is what really fascinates me, because I'm similar, I don't like being around big groups of people, and I still don't, and that's just my personality type. But I do it for good reasons. But it literally burns me out. I need some downtime from that. So for yourself, putting yourself in that situation, and then going back to, let's go back to that original moment when you were like, look, this is a challenge that I'm facing. How old were you? What was it like? What was sort of the moment where you were like, right, I am, faced with a challenge here of social anxiety. What was that moment, if you remember that, and how did you sort of go about stepping forward to improve that? And what was that experience like? That was probably like 30 questions in one, but
no, it's good. It's good. So the turning point for me when I really identified where things weren't right, and I was incredibly depressed, and I was completely drawn in and refused to see anyone besides my partner at the time. I was a complete shut-in, and it got to a point where things got quite serious, and it was after a particular incident where I was like, you know what? I need help. As clear as a bell. I was like, no, I just need to do something. And that was when I reached out to, first of all, through work, through their EAP services.
Yep.
And I'll be honest, that wasn't actually the most welcome and positive experience. So that's when
can you sort of, I guess, touch on that? Because I've never ever met someone who's reached out through work first. So this is awesome.
Yeah. Well, the main reason why I went through work was because my friends at work noticed that they kept asking me, are you okay? What's wrong? What's going on? Let's hang out. And I always like politely turn them down. I said, no, I'm fine, I'm fine. But obviously they could tell. I was like, no, you're not fine at all. But they were too scared. They were too afraid to really go any further than me saying it's fine. And that's when my team leader pulled me aside and was like, look, your performance is not at where it should be. Do you need assistance? And that's when she automatically went on to saying, we do have EAP available to you for all the people that work here. And I was like, oh, okay, never heard of them. So I went to the first one, and I guess this was an important point for me because during that first free session, there was a massive disconnect between myself and the psychologist, and it just didn't go well. And that's when I then went through like another phase, like, okay, that's not working. It's not for me. And very quickly, I was like, you know what? It's probably just the wrong person. So I reached out to like an actual professional, or not, I wouldn't say professional, but someone outside of the work-based employment assistant program, and hit it off really well with this guy who really helped me, first of all, develop the mindfulness that I needed within my workplace in order to bring my performance back up to where it needed to be.
Yep.
And so it was during that experience that he really opened up my mind to not trying to clear my mind, but more focusing around mindfulness of everything else around me to distract me in a way to not focus on my own inner dialogue that was going on.
Right. That's super interesting.
Oh yeah. I thought, with meditation, we hear quite a lot, clear your mind, try not to think of anything. But for us as humans, that's actually kind of difficult to do for a lot of us. Whereas he helped me see a different perspective where you don't need to do that. As humans, we can easily be distracted, and the best way to do that is to focus on everything around you instead. And that's when I first started to experience some alleviation from the depression and anxiety that I was experiencing at the time. So that was the first step towards developing that awareness and mindfulness of how me as an individual wasn't really impacted by the environment. It was all internal. I was the one that was impacting myself, and the environment was actually had nothing to do with it. It was just all me, basically.
Which I find it really interesting. I forgot to put this in at the start, that we're not here giving any advice or anything. This is just JP's story and an experience on how he's dealt with things and overcoming things around mental health and fitness and exercise. So once again, if you are being challenged with mental health, go see a health provider or a professional in those areas. But yeah, just going back to that, JP, I think you're really the first person that I've ever heard of dealing with it this way, in terms of looking at it as or understanding that you're in the environment and it's not the external environment that's having the effect on you. It's you yourself. And your inner dialect or your thoughts, because we all know that the more you're in your head, it's just crazy. It's like probably what I would imagine walking through that crosswalk in Tokyo is like, just stuff going everywhere.
Yeah, that's really good, actually.
It's fun for the first time, but then if it's doing that all day, it gets overwhelming and tiring. So going from that mindfulness, man, I remember you said something a few days ago, which for me was so awesome to hear, that the way you're still obviously challenged with depression at the moment, but because of your awareness around it, you know how to sort of manage it for yourself and still continue to chase your passion and purpose, which is super exciting. So I guess going back to that point, I guess for your co-workers at the time, and this is something that I really want to raise a lot more awareness around, is as individual, we still have a responsibility to be able to, first of all, be able to have people who are suffering or being challenged with mental health open up to us. But we also need to have, a bit more of an understanding of how to deal and cope with that situation at the time. Because, if people were too uneducated, I guess you could use uneducated, and it's not a bad thing. It's just there is no education there yet on how to, really help you open up to them. How for you at the time would it have been beneficial for them to get you to open up, if that makes sense, without sort of annoying you?
Oh man, I think,
if there was, there mightn't have even been a way.
I mean, looking back in retrospect, what would have helped my friends better engage with me would have been more persistent, and not necessarily asking me constantly, am I okay? But more asking me, let's go for a chat, let's go for a coffee or something, let's sit down. Because I'm pretty sure you would be aware of this too. Sometimes like the worst thing you can say to someone with anxiety/depression is, oh, it's okay, you'll be fine. Are you okay? It's like, no, I'm not okay, but yes, leave me alone, sort of thing. If they had have just been, more perceptive and not so afraid to be uncomfortable, really, with trying to understand what was actually going on with my scenario. I mean, obviously now I'm perceptive of others around me who might be going through it, and I'm not afraid to ask them, because it's just something that after you've gone through it, you're more perceptive and aware of it, of other people, like the not necessarily warning signs, but just the body language, the way they look, the way they hold themselves. You pick up on those things. But yeah, that would have been a big help if the friends had just been a bit more perceptive and just instead of asking, "Are you okay?" Hey, let's go for a chat, because that's not confronting the issue head on. It's a nice indirect way of saying, "Here's my hand. Would you like to take it?" As opposed to, what's wrong? Give me the answer now,
Yeah,
sort of approach.
100%. And
Mm,
I think from that perspective as well, it's to anyone who is in that position where you don't know what to do. And we all really don't know how to handle every situation, so different and unique. But like what you said there, it's a good way to let someone know, hey, I'm here. Let's
mm,
go for a coffee, and if you feel comfortable enough to open up and have a chat, let's do that. If not, let's just sit here and you can know that I'm here, sort of thing. Um,
mm,
as opposed to then just being like getting frustrated and saying, what's wrong with you? Figure it. Because I've done that, and it's the stupidest thing I could have ever done, but I learned from that experience.
yeah.
And people don't know what they don't know. So, hopefully through listening to this, they can get a bit better of understand what it's like on both sides of the fence,
Mm.
um, which is super interesting. So when you went into the mindfulness kind of stuff, what sort of stuff, or even now to this day, like when you go through a day, take us through what might be a day where it is super challenging for you, where if that, is there a recent one recently that, or you don't have to go into too much detail, but just what's it like for you? Is it hard to get out of bed, or you just lack the self-belief, or what's that experience for you? Because I know it's different for everyone, every person.
Absolutely. And it does vary, but one, yeah, like it's more the energy to want to do anything that goes first. Um, Feeling quite lethargic is a more physical sign that that the depression or anxiety is starting to really kick in.
Yep.
Um, and what I tend to do is because I've got the awareness around it, is when I recognize and acknowledge that it's happening, it's like, okay, what do I need to be doing? And more often than not, it's because I'm not doing something that I'm supposed to be doing.
Right.
Um, that causes that sinkingness, that heaviness to really take over. So proactivity is another huge thing for me. Is, what can I be doing today that's going to add value to my health and to everyone around me? Asking those self-guidance sort of questions. Um, so I can't really think of a more recent time because I've just been super busy.
Yeah. No,
So the
that
depression's been a guest outside somewhere. I don't know where it is, but he's outside somewhere.
just hanging around. But that in itself is incredible. And I think, you know, mental health, depression, anxiety, all that sort of stuff has such a stigma around it. And I know everyone's trying to break that at the moment, which is incredible. But
Mm,
the way I see it is like depression is like a broken arm, really. It can be fixed and you can seek advice, and you shouldn't feel bad about going through something because it's life. Right? But
yeah.
people come up and sign your cast, but people don't really, you don't have that same feeling if you're talking about depression for whatever reason. So if we can change that, but one thing there is creating that awareness around what you're going through with your emotions, and
Mm,
especially for men, this is a massive thing. Is
yeah.
we're often told to bottle it up, suck it up, or harden up, all that sort of stuff, which is not good. Like
Mm.
it feels good when you talk about stuff, and if we can create that awareness around it, like so, how did I guess I'll jump to that question in a second, but like creating awareness around what you're going through. So, like you just said, you know how to deal with it or react to that so that you can
Yeah.
still continue to have a high quality of life rather than, when your energy is lacking. And I know we're going to touch on this in a minute is, obviously your nutrition and the exercise play massive factors in how you feel physically and mentally and emotionally.
Mm.
Um, so going back, how did you first get introduced to learning about awareness around your emotions?
Oh, that was um, that was actually something a bit more recently in the last few years. Um, because after the mindfulness, it was when the psychologist recommended exercising at least 3 times a week,
Mm.
and that's what started the fitness journey. But the awareness around the emotions, that was something more. in the last few years that I really started to tap into more. And it wasn't actually anything that someone made me aware of directly. It was actually something that I stumbled across myself. And it was just through a very well-known self-development book called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. You probably, yeah, you've read it.
I've got it right here somewhere.
My copy right here as well.
Yeah.
That's the one. Good old Stephen Covey.
Yeah.
But it's like the fourth time that I've gone through the book, but it's the first time that I've actually applied the tasks that he gets you to do it at the end of each chapter. And it wasn't until the end of the second chapter that it was more like a massive lightning strike sort of moment for me, which people will probably understand more once they get to that particular chapter.
Yeah.
And that's when I was more aware of how energy and emotions are very tightly interlinked to each other. So for example, if I'm at, I don't know, bag packing at Coles and I hate the job, but it requires energy to do that job, then you start beating yourself up because you're in a job that you hate.
Yeah.
But you still got to do it because
need the money or whatever it is.
XYZ reason. So for me, that's when I learned to really dig down to understand that if my inner workings, my emotions, my purpose isn't in alignment with what I'm doing, then I'm going to end up putting myself back in an environment where it's going to foster that depression and anxiety to come on again. So it's very important to have or expending your energy in a way that is of value to yourself.
Yes, this is awesome. Yeah, this is 100% what I love talking about as well, and I'm glad you brought that up. And I already connected with that because I think it blows my mind that we aren't taught this stuff at school. Like,
yeah,
the biggest thing we crave as people is like progress equals happiness, and we know that. And I know you were saying that before. It's like if you don't have something, you can start feeling sad or falling backwards into that state of challenged emotion. But when we're constantly progressing, and whether that's physically, mentally, emotionally, it doesn't matter. We feel good, like we feel like we're achieving something, and through that state, it's like, why don't we get taught that at a young age, so that instead of me learning. And once again, the education system's awesome if you want to utilize it, but I think there's a lot of stuff I have never utilized since school. Imagine if we were utilizing and learning about our values and pursuing stuff that fulfilled those values since we were 10 years old.
Yeah.
Holy crap. Because you then understand, it's like, I would much rather pursue stuff that gives me that fulfillment than chase the highest paying job or do something, and once again, I don't recommend everyone do this, but like, if you want fulfillment at the end of the day is what we're all craving, all chasing.
Yeah.
Right. Because it enables our values, contribution, recognition. We can get all that stuff that we want, hence fulfillment. It just encapsulates all of that. So the fact that you're aware of that, and this is what's super cool, and for guys especially to understand that, hey, how did you first feel when you were starting to think emotionally, starting to speak emotionally? What was that experience like?
Oh man, I'm getting goosebumps. That particular moment, oh man, it was like the first time I felt like a separate entity in a place that I'd already worked at for quite some time. It's like, what am I doing here? I've wasted all this time and energy only to end up cycling back through this vicious cycle. this has to stop.
Yep.
Um,
I think
so,
I think on that as well, it's like it only becomes wasted time when you become aware.
yeah,
If you're not aware, it's all part of the journey. Like, but if you're aware that you need to change it and you don't, you're now wasting time. So for anyone listening who is only just become aware, you're all good. You're
yeah,
sweet.
yeah.
Sorry, I just cut off the train of thought of where we're going with that. Oh yeah, how you felt. So, like, what advice would you give for? I guess, yeah. Let's talk about men, because I think we struggle more than females do at sharing our emotions. There's just whatever, we covered it briefly before, the stigma around not actually being able to open up and even just have a conversation like what we're having right now.
Mm.
How did you first step into that and own that? Because I know, like, for me, I had to, and as much as this is part of my journey and regret that, I changed up my whole friendship group and just got around people who were already at that level and they were more consciously aware and were happy to talk about their emotions rather than try and do that in my, old social group. Whereas now I'm happy to go back to that because I've built the confidence and stuff. So for yourself, how was that experience, or how did it first, how did you first, I guess, just were like, stuff it, I need to just start talking about what's real rather than this superficial stuff?
When I first started to really talk emotionally, would have been um, when I first actually became a personal trainer.
Right.
I was so comfortable and aware with my struggles that I just stopped hesitating when someone else mentioned that they were going through some rough patches themselves. So instead of talking about the mental health side of it straight away, I would focus more on the struggle itself, because it's a very similar process at the end of the day. Um, so that's when I started to have that emotional intelligence ready to come into play with the job, by um, being able to have that consultative sort of approach to those clients and also the people that I was working with. And it really had a ripple effect because it started to create indirectly awareness around the challenges themselves, which was an awesome thing to see, because people bit by bit over time became more perceptive of what it meant for guys to really open up and speak. Because again, as I'm sure you're aware, like the sort of our upbringing, as you said, harden up, you'll be fine. Oh, it's all right. Or just go walk it off. And that sort of approach without actually dealing with it directly. And that's where the violence comes from for quite a lot of us. Like the aggression comes out physically,
Yep.
as opposed to dealing with it emotionally and openly instead. So yeah, the being a personal trainer really enabled or gave me that platform, that stage really to speak to a lot of the male not male trainers, the male clients that I had, because a lot of them identified with it.
Yep.
And they're all like long-time friends now. Like we still talk and stuff, like, hey, how's it going, and how are you, and oh, I'm going through a rough patch at the moment. And you're like, okay, cool, let's have a chat about it. Like there's no resistance anymore to be able to open up and have that line of communication with them, even though they're in a different state and we've been friends on Facebook now for like 5 years. Like they're not clients anymore, they're friends. So I think it's very healthy because it establishes a deeper friendship among guys itself. Um,
Yep.
and I think it just needs to happen more.
Yeah, 100%. So you can make great friends within a conversation for people who open up, as opposed to, you know, some people you might have had an acquaintance with for your whole life and you still just talk about beer, girls and footy or whatever it is, you know, it's superficial stuff. And I think something you were sort of going to there, which is, you know, one of the best things I think about being in the health profession is working with people and having clients. We get to understand, you know, we'll hear all bits and pieces of people's lives, their challenges, their victories, all that sort of stuff. But I think when it really boils down to it, everyone's going through the same shit, just in a different event or scenario. And it's like, it doesn't matter how big or small we might think the event is, it's the biggest single thing happening in that person's life at that point in time. And, you know, I feel this is where you were going, like being able to have those conversations with people and understand that that's what they're going through, to then be able to provide advice and also an ear to listen. It's like, if just as people, we could get that. And I feel like everyone's so busy that we never lend an ear unless it's a scream for help. But it's like, we can prevent the scream for help by just literally giving a few minutes every day. You know, it doesn't have to be every day, but just to people who are dying for a conversation. Because these bad boys, it's like everyone knows we're so connected, but also so disconnected because everything's like sales or crap going in your face all the time. It's never like, let's sit down and just connect. So going from that and obviously going into your training side and, you know, through, I think, you know, you've got such a great awareness like myself because we communicate with people who are going through similar things and we get to learn from their experiences and also, you know, just listen. It enables our awareness to become a lot better. So it's a tip of advice for anyone out there is like, if you start listening more to people's struggles and, you know, just chatting and seeing what they go through, what it's like for them to go through it, it's going to help you if you ever, you know, are challenged with something like that as well. So JP, as a trainer now, how have you personally, you know, allowed a better diet and then also, you know, add in the exercise? Because I know, what was it, recommended 3 days a week of movement for you at the start. How did you notice that impact your mental well-being?
The first thing for me was that it actually gave me, even though it wasn't as a whole, it was like one part of my life that I knew I had control over.
Oh, that's good.
So with obviously mental health issues, they can be overwhelming and we feel like we're losing control. But whereas with fitness, it can be structured and you've got something to follow and it gives you a sense of, cool, this is something I can do. This is something I can track. I'm getting progress with this. There's all these other elements to it that can enrich my fitness journey. And with that sense of progress and process at the same time, you can then start to apply that to pretty much any other area of your life, really. But it's just that simple recognition, that simple realization. It's like, you know, as trainers as well, like we can push people really, really hard to the point where it becomes a mental game for them. And then they compare that to what they're going through. And then they start to realize, oh, it's at the end of the day, it's just another process that I have to go through and deal with. So where do you start? So that was the beauty of the fitness side of it, is that it's like, yes, this is the one thing that I can control and own, even though everything else around me is going crappy. It's like the one thing they look forward to the most, like it's their 40 minutes of happiness, really.
I think that's incredible. I just took a heap of notes and that was epic. It's exactly right. Like, focus on what you can control. Whereas often the time we're comparing against other people, or like you just mentioned, we're focusing on stuff that's out of our control, but we make it our problem. So therefore we've got more stress and more stuff clouding our brain, right? Going on there. But then also from the fitness side, which was awesome, was like tracking your progress, because obviously it's easy to go into the gym and have no idea what's doing. So you spend 15 minutes trying to figure it out, do a few chest press and get out and be like, that was a waste of time. But if you've got a plan to follow, not only does it take the stress away, you literally just walk in and go, but then you see the progress and you feel good. And once again, progress equals happiness, like you touched on. But it's also falling in love with the process. So, and this is then goes back to what you touched on. So like falling in love with the process through fitness is doing it in an indirect way where we don't actually have to have a look at ourselves first. Like we don't have to have a look at what's going on up in our head, which is the challenges we don't often want to address. But as you mentioned, if through fitness we can see progress and understand the process of challenges, setbacks, maybe even injury, whatever it is, we can then be like, that makes so much sense to what I'm going through in my head, or what's going on in this area of my life. And it's just the same process is tweaked a little bit, going on in all our other aspects of our life. And the sooner we can, start identifying that and going through that and realizing that for ourselves, the sooner we can then take those processes and be like, right, let's start implementing it and moving forward. Because like you said, it's the emotions that I'm going through are just a challenge that I'm being faced in. It's like, do I want to let them control me, or do I want to grow and move forward with them? That was epic, man. So that was so good. So in saying that as well, like obviously the fitness aspect you just nailed. What about the diet side? Because, and I think this goes back to men especially, we just want to go in and curl and do weights and get six packs. But it was only till 4 years ago that I really started looking at my diet, but it made the most significant change on my mental clarity and all that overall. So for yourself, like how was that experience?
Oh man, see, it was in sort of like my late teens is when I became a bit more health conscious, but I should say more health aware. Because, you're aware of what media and the magazines are saying you should and shouldn't be eating. But when you eat with a purpose that matches the progress and the journey itself, it's just an overall feeling of well-being that you start to notice. Like I'm sleeping better, for example. I've got more energy when it comes to really wanting to exert myself and challenge and put those stresses on me physically. But it's just another one of those feel-good moments, like when you've done, like, say, 3 weeks into a challenge and you're already starting to feel lighter, more energy, you're sleeping better. And you're like, wow, why did I not start doing this sooner? It's one of those realizations. But it's just, you start to crave and want to be healthy in terms of your food choices. It's still a challenge. I mean, I still have my cheat meals and snacks every now and then, but I don't beat myself up over them anymore, because I know it's like, this is just, say, 2 meals out of the, I don't know, 35 that I eat in a week. It's just 2. It's not going to set me back 2 weeks. It's just going to set me back, I don't know, 20
meals. Yes.
Who?
Yeah.
I train 5 to 7 times a week. Nah, I'm still going forwards. So that's the beauty of the nutrition side of it, and just learning and understanding as well, getting that variety in there. That's so important. That was the fun part. Instead of, you always think from typical meal plans, broccoli, rice, and chicken. It's like, oh, I cringe when I hear people eating that. It's like, are you serious? There's so much more you can be eating. And there's so much more. I can actually make it fun and interesting and engaging and educational. So, yeah, the nutrition side of it was just as crucial, if not more important, in my opinion, anyway. So it just came down to that, asking questions and understanding macros and micros and the importance they play. But the end benefit was just feeling like you're living better, like you're actually looking after yourself from just throwing weights around or just sweating it out. You're
Yeah.
actually looking yourself outside of the gym as well. So it ends up being like a twofold impact on the mental health side of things as well. It's like, oh, look, I'm looking after myself physically. I'm looking after myself nutritionally as well. Awesome. I feel good. Yay to me. I deserve that.
100%. That's the other key thing is I think when people think strict diet and gym, it's always for me to lose weight or for me to get the six pack, it's got to be chicken and broccoli. And it's like, no, that's just lack of education. Like really, like, yeah, that works for certain people, but I've done that and it's freaking horrible. Like I hated it. And the thing, like you said, if you're wanting to make a sustainable change for your well-being, you've got to start exercising and you've got to start eating well. But you can't just be like, oh, I'm going to wait for someone to teach me. It's just like, go start reading and playing around with recipes. And if you eat it and you feel good, not just after like you would with a cheeseburger, but like after from some energy, keep that recipe for later. And it's like, I have the most boring diet. Well, it's good, but it's like, it's the same thing every day almost, but it works for me. But then I change it up on my, meals where I go out for dinner. It's just like, I know I'm going to eat whatever I feel like because I've got the same simple thing that's getting me the results. And it's not chicken, rice and broccoli. It's flavorsome. It's good, but
Exactly.
it's not that boring. You know what I mean? So final question, what for anyone going through some, mental well-being or mental health challenges at the moment, I know it's like, what would you recommend doing? But if you could go coming from the awareness point of view, like, which is what I believe you're so knowledgeable in, what would you recommend? How would you recommend people go about becoming more aware and stepping into that, I guess, so that they can, once you become aware of your emotions, you can then have a bit better control over them?
Oh, as soon as you started to ask the question, there's this one technique that I was taught that really starts the awareness around what's actually happening as opposed to experiencing it and being overwhelmed by it. So, for example, it's what they refer to as third person perspective. So, like you and I talking right now, we're having a conversation. That's one perspective. The second perspective could be, for example, say we're having this conversation, but you in your head right now, you're thinking something else. Your mind's elsewhere. That second perspective. Third perspective, and this is gonna it took time for me to really develop this particular skill. It's not easy, but it really helps you see what's going on to better identify when and what's actually happening and how it's happening. Third perspective is being the observer of all of that happening at the same time. So we're having this conversation, your head's elsewhere, and there's also Lockie up here who's like watching this whole process happening. It's like, okay, so it all started from JP saying about this, and then that's when my head just went bang over here, and anxiety started happening. So that's third person perspective, and it's such a powerful tool. That's one thing I always get people to do, to be honest, and it literally makes everyone that I've told about it really think. They're like, I never thought of it that way. It's like, it's hard to do at first, I'm not going to lie, but even just practicing that, you start to understand what the triggers are and how it actually happens, which goes back to that whole process.
My head is racing like that now. So I guess the question around that is like, when you're trying to observe the whole conversation, is it sort of like whenever someone says something that triggers us, we automatically create our own problem? Is that?
Yeah.
Yeah, right. That's interesting.
Yeah, it's
Makes a
like
lot of sense though. Yeah, and it makes sense though, because we love to always feel like we've got something to stress about, even if it's not even happening to us. It's just like, yeah, now my head is racing. That's an awesome point, guys. So um, always take that third party observation and really think, are you just creating a problem because of what you've just heard to feel, I guess it might even make you feel significant, or is it, yeah, just think about why you're thinking what you're thinking instead of being engaged.
Mm.
Man, that's got my head frying.
It's a powerful technique.
Yeah.
Very simple, powerful. It took me a good 6 months to really knuckle down. But again, like you just experienced there, like everyone that I mentioned that to, they're like, whoa, okay, that's okay, you got me on that
Yeah. Challenging. So yeah, I guess finally just closing up, guys, he just dropped another nugget there, which is it takes time, and you're gonna as long as you can start creating awareness, and bad days still happen. That's just part of life. But if you can catch yourself and understand why it's happening, and understand or become more aware of whether it's worth thinking about, or if it's just a problem that you might be manifesting, you can catch yourself there so that you'll be able to have more good days than bad days. Finally, JP, I just want to really thank you for giving, almost we'll just say an hour of your time to share your experience and how you've created more awareness in your life, which has ultimately helped you, control your mental well-being more. Because I know, the people who listen to that, it's going to impact a lot of people, and it's going to get them to start thinking, because I'm thinking right now. And yeah, so thank you so much for your time and your experience.
You're welcome, and thanks for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure.
I look forward to continuing this conversation. I'm sure we'll have you back on here again soon as it keeps evolving. Which would be
Awesome,
awesome.
sounds good.
I'll just